we supposed to make some G-rated small talk right now?
I think so. I'll pretend we haven't. Yeah. I'll pretend that we haven't been on here for the last 10 minutes and say, hey guys, thanks for coming.
Right. You know, an anchorman, when you know, they split out to the screen and they're going to break, and all the anchors just arrange their notes and like clean up their paper.
Yeah.
Arbitrary. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Well, I think we have looks like about 70 people who've hopped on already, which is awesome. So we'll get started in a couple minutes. We'll just give a few minutes for people to log on here.
Cool.
Swish, what's that poster of in the background? Is that the shoe on there?
It's like it's a visual compendium of like all sneakers from like the 1950s onwards, like signature shoes that were timeless during their time. I'm actually trying to count how many I have. I only have one of those, but I need to. My goal is to get every single one of them.
Wow. Which ones do you have? Some Jordans?
I have the Vans, which is terrible. Okay. I don't even skate. Like I don't even know why I have them.
It's okay. I have a lot of Jordans, but I don't really play basketball, so
fair
more of a cultural statement.
You can get away with Jordans in cultural. I feel like you can't. Like Vans are very particular to like a type of person.
Right.
And that type of person is not me. But
the checkered ones?
Oh yeah, the checkered ones, and then it's like the high top, not the low top. I can't do the low top one. Yeah, the high top. Yeah.
Yeah, you need that ankle support.
Very much so. Very much so.
All right. Well, I think we got about 90 people so far, which is awesome. So we'll probably kind of give it people another minute here, get settled in, and then we'll kick it off. Keep everyone entertained for the next 60 minutes.
Yeah. It's actually crazy just looking outside and how beautiful it is.
Yeah, I know. I hope everyone who's joining is staying safe and healthy and hopefully getting some good weather. Or a few of us here are based in Canada, so summertime is very exciting for us. It's a short season.
We don't get it. We don't get it a lot.
We basically don't get it. So that's why we talk about the weather every day when it's sunny and above 10 degrees Celsius, which probably no one on this webinar knows what 10 degrees Celsius is, because I don't know the conversion to Fahrenheit.
Double it and add 30, is that it?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Yeah. We got the American. I can token American here.
On that. Yeah, seriously. Closed-minded.
No. Okay, cool. So let's kick it off. First off, thank you so much, everyone, for registering, for joining us today. We're really excited. Clearbanc's getting more in the webinar scene here, so we want to we prepared about 60 minutes for everyone to talk a little bit more about influencer marketing, ambassador programs, lots of different great topics today. So we have the experts on, and we're going to be peppering them with all sorts of great questions. And we got so many before the webinar. Just a little housekeeping. So I'll pass it over to Tom and Swish, our guests. But if anyone does have any questions along the way, please submit them in the Q&A portion. It's just at the bottom of your screen there, and we'll try to get to them. And also, this will be recorded, so if you have to drop off, at any point, that will be sent via email. So I'll kind of start. So I'm Margot. I'm a strategic partnership manager here at Clearbanc. For those who aren't familiar with Clearbanc, we provide non-dilutive capital for fast-growing online businesses, so primarily e-commerce and SaaS businesses right now. So we'll plug all of our platforms and companies at the end, and we'll kind of talk a little bit, throughout the next 60 minutes on how we work with tech and marketing platforms like Trufan, like Choley, the founders who we have here today. So I will start by introducing Swish. He's the CEO and co-founder of Trufan. So Swish, I'll pass it over to you, and you can kind of tell everyone a little bit about Trufan.
Sure. Thanks so much, Margot. I am not on mute. Surprise, surprise. Thank God. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. I know I'm one of those types of people, but I think it's going to be a lot clearer if I share my screen and just go through this really quickly. Trufan, we've basically built out a platform to help businesses of all sizes make smarter marketing decisions using data. So we have this platform, Social Rank, that helps you identify micro-influencers that follow you, helps you identify who your most valuable followers are, and then compare audiences to each other. So on the platform, you can go through and you can request a follower report. So you could see all of your followers on Instagram or Twitter from top to bottom. You can sort and filter that following by location, by the keywords they have in their bio, by their following, are they verified or not, etc. You can also go through and you can not only see your account though, you can see over 10 million audience reports that we have on our system. So Nike can run Adidas, Puma can run Nike, Coca-Cola can run Pepsi. You can run your competitor or an influencer that you were interested in working with, see their followers, and then understand more about their audience, where they're located, how many fake followers do they have, etc. We're also the only platform in the world that has over 1 billion profiles on Twitter and over 1 billion profiles on Instagram, and allowing you to filter that audience really quickly. So we call it Cerebro. We're all very geeky. We love X-Men, and in X-Men, Professor X wears a helmet to find humans and mutants. And so we give you the ability to go through Instagram pretty much, over 1 billion profiles saved on our system, and filter out people that you want to work with based on the characteristics they have on social media. And finally, we have a little bit of a feature for content, not as extensive definitely as Choley, and I know Tom's going to do a great job talking about Choley, but for content, we allow you to link any Instagram post in to see all the people that have liked or commented on that post, and then go through and filter those people based on where they're located, how many followers they have, etc. So that's everything about Trufan. We're really excited to be here. And Margot, back to you.
I love this. We have the whole Anchorman theme going strong. Awesome. No, thanks so much. Yeah. So as you can tell, Swish and their platform, Trufan, is as the experts when it comes to finding your audience, depending on kind of what types of influencer content creator strategy that you're rolling out. So with that said, Tom is the CEO and co-founder of Choley, and their bread and butter is really finding you and he's going to do a lot better job of pitching his platform, but finding you the right content and working with the right influencers to create that content for your digital ads. So I'll pass it over to you, Tom.
That was a great intro. And yeah, Margot and the entire Clearbanc team, thank you so much for having us. This is awesome. And to all of you joining, thanks for joining. Cool. So I'm going to do the same and share my screen because I don't want to feel left out here. But great. So as you'd mentioned there, Choley is all about content generation. So my co-founder and Eric and I started the company 4 years ago after having worked in the user-generated content space. And the primary value that we saw in influencers was actually beyond just their sort of social reach and clout. We saw a clear answer to all of our problems and all of our challenges within the user-generated content space. We saw creators and influencers as a great conduit to create branded content at scale. So the way that our software platform works is it's a marketplace. So brands will join our platform. They'll run a series of campaigns. It's kind of the mechanics of how it all happens. They'll get their campaign out in front of the creators that fit with what they're going for with that particular campaign. And every campaign has a set of deliverables, goals, has compensation worked out, and timelines worked out in advance as well. But yeah, Margot, as you'd mentioned, we have full influencer capabilities, full data around that. It's just that our bread and butter is really around this visual asset generation. We started doing a lot more with product reviews as well. But the way that we have positioned the company and the product is that it revolves around the premise that brands need more content than they've ever needed before. Partially because of all the rise in digital channels, but also because of the personalization that's become like the default for brands when it comes to reaching consumers. So rather than do more and more expensive photo shoots to meet that content demand, we say, hey, like everyone that has a smartphone in their pocket is a creator. So let's knock out the influencer side, but let's focus on content with a specific focus on content that that's ready for ads, for website, for email marketing. How can we help brands improve their digital performance, scale that program, and also save money in the process? That's all from me. I'll kick it back to you.
All right, great. No, that was super helpful. And yeah, as far as kind of how Clearbanc works with both these great partners is we really want to do our best to connect our customers with the right partner, so we can continue to kind of help make those recommendations. We underwrite companies all based on their data, so we try to leverage some of that to make those recommendations to the right partners, and ideally just help them grow and connect some of those dots. So I'll stop talking about Clearbanc, and we can kind of jump into some of the juicy questions that we got from lots of different customers and prospects, hopefully. So let's just jump right in. And this is actually the first question I'll ask both of you. So maybe Tom, just because in my little Zoom window here, you're beside me, we'll have you answer it first. So very timely, lots of different spend behavioral habits have changed as we're all working from home and maybe still quarantining. So how can we, as a brand, how should my business strategy change either during or after COVID-19 when it comes to partnering with influencers or when I'm thinking about content?
Yeah, so at a very macro level, the way that marketing is conducted and the entire ecosystem that we call marketing is absolutely evolving, and COVID is only going to speed up certain trends that were already in motion prior to. So one very noteworthy piece that we expect to subsist is that e-commerce is only going to become more and more important. Not a news flash for anyone, but as a result of that, ad prices on Facebook, Instagram, other popular ad platforms are going to continue to go up. Just to give you like some global perspective on this, I was just reading this morning that e-commerce purchases in the country of Italy have gone up 81% since February, right? And they say it takes 61 days to establish a clear habit. Obviously, this pandemic has lasted a lot longer than 61 days. It feels like 61 years, frankly.
Yeah.
But the point is that, we now have a new consumer group that's entered the world of e-com, and this has just become a habit, right? So as ads become more and more expensive, more and more brands invest time and energy and spend into these channels, you're going to need some real strategies to differentiate yourself and make sure that you're able to acquire customers at reasonable rates. So one thing that we're working very hard with our clients on is tons and tons of content generation. We call it opening the fire hose of content, video assets, user-generated content, professional photography. Let's just find ways to arm them so that they're testing. So they have the tools to test and test and test and refine and refine and refine. So we think that the brands that are ultimately going to separate themselves, and again, COVID has accelerated this more macro trend, they're going to be the ones that have more content to work with and are running more sophisticated testing programs.
That's great. And just a quick question as far as kind of the testing piece goes, is that something on your platform, you have those capabilities to start to run those tests in real time? And how fast can customers kind of see the results of which content is working versus others?
Yeah. So we're able to help guide performance in collaboration with their performance marketing teams. And that's very central to our roadmap, is being able to partner with the companies that, that are leading in the ad serving space, are doing a lot with SMS, are doing a lot with email personalization. So we don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. We just need to be the content source to actually drive this performance.
Gotcha. No, that's great. And then I think this is a great segue because we're talking about building those partnerships with creators, with influencers, ambassadors. So Swish, maybe I'll pass it over to you. How are you seeing that your customers, their business strategies are changing? And yeah, maybe we can start there. Oh, you're on mute.
You're mute.
It had to happen once. It always happens.
Yeah. We broke the ice.
Very much piggybacking though off what Tom said, I think with e-commerce and how that's been blowing up, I do think that the fact of the matter is social media consumption has only gone up as people are going back into their homes. The amount of time they're spending on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. has only gone up. And I do believe that every brick and mortar business that starts, it doesn't matter if you're an e-commerce company for that matter, you could be a restaurant or a retailer, needs to have a digital strategy going forward. And it's not just to have it for a rainy day, it's to have it for understanding where consumer activity mainly is and where it's continuously going towards. So I think with that in mind, a big part of what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to democratize that type of data, right? A lot of times you come on and you're inundated with a lot of social media tools that are incredibly expensive. They're really convoluted and hard to understand. And you're not really able to participate in that because of either cost or just knowledge. And that's, I think, where a platform like Choley, I think a platform even like ours comes into play, where it's simple, it's easy to come on, it's affordable to come on and understand exactly how to reach out to people and start working with them immediately to just test that avenue of marketing out. I don't think every company should do influencer marketing, but I think every company should test it out at least to see whether or not their consumers are listening to people that they can work with. That's the big thing that we're trying to look at right now.
Okay, great. And just kind of a nice segue into the next question. And so we had a few questions come through from customers around how to choose the right creators, influencers, et cetera. And so maybe we can start and kind of help to define. So for those who don't know, and I'm totally included, what is the difference between a creator, an influencer, and a micro influencer? And I'll just pass it to one of you to answer or both.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. We use the term creator to be all encompassing. So within our platform, we have over 110,000 active creators. And, an influencer, that includes influencers, but a photographer wouldn't necessarily be classified as an influencer, right? So just slightly broader, more encapsulating term, particularly when you're more focused on content, whereas influencers, as the word implies, have influence over an owned audience.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. That helps a lot. And then, so let's talk about how to choose the right creator influencer. If I was a brand, maybe I'm just gaining some momentum as an e-commerce company, I want to test out this channel. What is the best way to go about finding those partners?
You want to take that, Swish?
Sure, yeah. I think the first thing is to look within your own community first. I think a lot of times people look external and they look for people that have millions of followers. A lot of times those people have fake followers, they have fake engagement, they charge way too much, and they don't have as good engagement rates as people that are within your community. They might have a localized following, but they have a higher engagement rate because the people that they service and post to actually care about them on a daily basis. So I would look at your own community first. I would look at the people that are commenting on your posts, following you, liking on your content, coming out to your events, customers of yours even that have bought your product, and see, is there a way I could put together 25, 30 of people like these to post on my behalf or to give them free product and arm them to go to an event? Actually Red Bull does a fantastic job of this on college campuses around the world. I went to the University of Toronto, and within my first 2 weeks of orientation, I think I saw a Red Bull truck like 8 times, and they were being driven and Red Bull was being handed out by people like me, college students that were volunteering and working with them in exchange for free product or an internship in the summer. So I think there's great opportunities to work with your consumer base first.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I love the idea, and I've seen a few platforms recently of just building out essentially being able to connect with existing customers and really leveraging those as your advocates, which I love that idea. Okay, great. Sorry, we're getting a few questions, which is awesome. So I just wanted to see if there's anything relevant. So we will definitely get to those in a second. So one thing that I think kind of lends nicely to this conversation is, so let's talk about kind of building those long-term relationships with your creators, with those influencers. You know, you want to find the right people who are building that audience for you. Obviously, storytelling is so important through that partnership, because you want to make sure that, you know, your partners, your influencers, there's kind of value, or there's an alignment of values between the brand and the partner. So what is kind of the best way to obviously choose that group of influencers or creators, and then also build those long-term relationships?
Yeah, I can certainly take that. So first of all, just to echo Swish's point there on turning to your own audience, I think that's awesome. And if they've actually already experienced the product, they can probably speak to it with a little bit more knowledge, intimacy. And then, you know, particularly when we look at Gen Z and the millennial consumer groups, they can sense inauthenticity, right? And that authentic advocacy can be huge. Another point I'd make there before we get into the long-term piece is, actually let's jump right into the long-term piece. I think that, because I think that's a nice prompt. So tying into that, don't fall in love with specific influencers, or as Swish was saying, don't go out and pay a bunch of money for huge influencers. Sure, it works time and time again, but it's not a consistent strategy. And just going the Kim Kardashian route, it's not gonna scale. It's not gonna work in the long run. So what we typically suggest here, just going off of that theme, is that you run campaigns on Choley that appeal to a broader type of segment. We're not going out and inviting specific people just because we fall in love with their content. We're seeing who actively applies and shows interest in working with that brand. The creator also has the ability to write a little snippet like, hey, I love you guys. I have so many ideas for the content I want to create. Let's do it. And then from there, so you can select people who show real interest. Then you can look at the actual performance of their influencer post. And within Choley, you can do this, but you can do it on your own as well. You can basically measure the difference between their relative, like just to the relative performance. So what's their standard engagement rate? If my standard engagement rate as an influencer is 5%, but I've posted about this product twice and I've gotten 10% engagement both times, that's a clear indicator that the audience is showing, you know, some real affinity for the product, and it's probably someone that you'd like to, you know, explore a longer term relationship with. So I think that could be a nice thing to look at for sure.
Yeah, and we actually just got a question from Lorna, and hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right, Lorna. So do companies create some parameters on how to choose influencers, in brackets, for longevity for the company strategy? If yes, what are some things to look for?
Yeah, I can take that. I think the three that I've seen normally, and again, I'm running this ad tech platform right now, but before that, I was part of an influencer page called Dunk on Instagram, where we did work with brands. And the three parameters we normally saw is either we're doing this campaign for brand awareness, we're just trying to get views and clicks, like Tom talked about, probably not sustainable, but if you have a really kick-ass piece of content that you want to go viral, you're hopefully going to bank on that. The second is you're looking for conversion in terms of their followers, like the influencers' followers coming over and starting to follow your page. Or third, you're looking for conversion in terms of them buying your product, which is really, really hard to do on both the paid ad side and the influencer side. But I think one thing that Tom talked about, which is fantastic, is looking at sustainability. I think long gone are the days where brands now are just looking for influencers for brand awareness. I think what you should try to do is the latter two, where you should look at trying to convert their followers into becoming followers of your page or getting them to buy your product. Because the amount of times that I've seen businesses go through and try to acquire a customer once and then twice and then 3 times, paying money to ads or paying money to the same influencers to market to the exact same people, is just ridiculous. So if you're able to go through and bring them as a part of your customer base, whether it's getting their email or getting them to follow your page so that they're part of your community, and now you can start retargeting them on your own dime, that's, I think, the most preferential way of thinking about the outcome of an influencer campaign.
Yeah, I can spin off of that too. So another thing to think about in terms of picking creators, picking the right creators, is, you know, what's the demographic that you're trying to reach, right? who are we after? So, obviously we want to have some alignment there. So if I'm targeting young families, let's look at some mom bloggers, some dad bloggers, whoever it might be. And then, as a part of that, let's also internally within my own brand, within my own organization, let me think more broadly about just the awareness, the immediate awareness that an influencer post brings. And let me think about creating a bunch of content that I could then share with my digital team, with my ads team, with my agency. Content is kind of the lifeblood of a brand, right? So think about it more holistically. Think about content generation. Ask for some extra photos, because once they're doing the project, it's pretty easy for them to take a few more shots, potentially do a video for you. So think about the broader impact and the long tail effect of your collaborations.
That's awesome. No, that's super helpful. And we actually just got a question from Alice that I think flows nicely here. And we'll get to some questions around tracking and what metrics to look at. But before we do, so Alice said, but how do you bring followers from influencers pages to brand pages? Can you give some examples?
Sure, I can give a pretty clear example that's happening right now. There's a festival in BC called 5X. And they're working with Lily Singh, who's obviously a big YouTuber out of Ontario, Superwoman, as some people, her fans like to call her, including me, by the way. But at the same time, the coolest thing that they've done to structure the influencer campaign is they've gone ahead and they've started an interview series with her. So they interviewed her across 6 mini episodes. These are 5-minute episodes each. Lily's posted about the first episode saying, go and check it out on the 5X page. And then in order for you to be able to go through and get the remaining 5 episodes that they recorded, you have to follow the 5X page, right? So there's a clear incentive now for Lily's followers if they want to see that exclusive content where she talks about things that hopefully she hasn't talked about in mainstream media. For now them to be able to get it, they need to follow this page and be a part of the 5X community, right? And especially if there's alignment there, like the 5X community, I know their values are very much around music, they're very much around inclusivity and diversity. I think that's great because it also matches the values of what Lily talks about to her audience about mutual respect, inclusion, and diversity. So I think that's another reason why that campaign would work really well.
Great. And then Autumn Rose actually had a great question too. What would you suggest is the best way to build a following when you have a product that is a one-time purchase? For example, bridal gowns. We have started with Choley for UGC and reviews. What parameters would be what parameters would that kind of company be trying on social media?
Parameters. Well, I think in that case, you're trying to build an aspirational type of presence, right? Like you want people to follow your account long before they're even interested in that purchase. So you have to be thinking more about like ongoing engagement. How are you telling a story? How are you bringing people into it? And I wanted to jump back to one point because I think it's very relevant about like the development of the influencer space. Swish was talking about this a minute ago that a scalable strategy isn't necessarily one that includes huge influencers and is extremely costly. Just looking at what Facebook did with Facebook in the past in terms of suppressing the organic reach of brands' posts and kind of transitioning it into more of like a pay-to-play type of space. I do think that's clearly happening with influencers as well. So starting off right now, I would build an influencer program differently than I would have 5 years ago when it was still a time-based feed and influencers were reaching significantly larger percentages of her or his audience, right? So that's another reason why we do think that pulling plenty of content out of these collaborations is huge, right? Because it can then be repurposed and paid anywhere across digital. But obsessing over like owned audience size or even things like engagement rate, I think it's a little bit short-sighted. It's becoming more pay to play. You're going to see more of these like, influencer dark posts that are ads that look like influencer posts. That's going to be more common. But the reason I like like Swish and the Trufans approach is that, you know, it's thinking about this in just a slightly more way. How can unique way and forward-looking way? How can we, you know, leverage what we already have with our community? How can we identify those people, work with them long term, see who's most influential? But, you know, just going crazy and spending a bunch of money on influencer posts right now, you know, I think that strategy is going to continue to go by the wayside.
And Margot, one thing, sorry, just to add there, Tom, but for Autumn in particular, actually, I love that question too. I think one really good example you should take a look at is Away. They're a direct-to-consumer suitcase company. Now they probably spend a lot of money on ads and they spend a lot of money working with influencers. But when they started off, you'll notice that even though they were selling a suitcase, and I mean, how many times do people really buy a suitcase? Like, I think I bought maybe 1 or 2 in the last 2-3 years. What they're trying to do on Instagram is try to sell a lifestyle, right? So they're not speaking directly about the suitcase. They're talking about how great it is to have an incredible, easy to use suitcase in the larger travel experience when it comes to packing your bag and getting to an airport, being able to not have to check in that bag, lower cost there, being able to get to your destination and enjoy everything in a compact bag where you have everything that you need in order to be able to enjoy that trip. So what I would think about, especially with bridal gowns, is taking a look at the larger sentiment of marriage and the beauty of that day from start to finish, and how much money and how much thought is put into a marriage, and trying to make that a very easy choice for them to think about. Because I do think that travel, marriage, and dogs are like the 3 happiest things on Instagram to post about. And so you're in a great category, I think, to share more around the broader sentiment.
Yeah, I love that. And actually that just reminds me, so there's a bridal company called Park and Fifth who, so they originally launched, I believe, doing bridesmaids dresses at an affordable cost, great styles. And then they just launched kind of a more affordable bridal gown line. And anyways, I was in a wedding and got a bridesmaid's dress from me last year, and noticed that they're also doing, you know, ties for the groomsmen, little bandanas for any dogs that are in the wedding, so that they could all match. And then during COVID too, they had some extra materials, and they started taking the same fabrics from those bridesmaids dresses and making kind of throw pillows out of them. And unfortunately, they're only shipping those around the Vancouver area, because I absolutely would have bought one. It's such a wonderful and beautiful sentiment. It reminds you of that special day. And, you know, they reached out to their community during the last couple of months to really understand what people were looking for, asking for questions, if people were okay to kind of donate a few dollars on top of their order, just to kind of help them, because they are a small business, kind of get through this time. So I think those were very great examples of a company who, you know, it's a kind of larger ticket purchase, where they're getting a little bit creative through this crazy time. Okay, great. So we have some questions coming in around, let's talk about, you know, a company, when they're mature enough to use kind of one-year platforms, at what point should they start using influencer marketing? So maybe we can kind of start there, and then we'll talk a little bit about compensation, negotiations, when to pay influencers versus give them free product, etc. So yeah, let's start first, kind of, tell us a little bit about your ideal customer profile, and kind of for a brand, at what point should they start thinking about this channel?
Sure. I can lead off there. So, you know, you can certainly start out with an influencer program, incorporating creators on Instagram, on TikTok, whenever. You can absolutely start that when you're a day old. There's absolutely no reason that that you need to wait. It's just that with Choley specifically, if you know, if a brand is only doing 1 or 2, you know, collaborations a month, then, you know, we're probably not the best strategic partner. Where we typically have the most value for our clients and for the brands who are you know, most successful with us are the ones that are really looking for scale, time efficiency, and then data to bring it all together, right? So that's sort of the ideal timing for us in terms of a company that's growing. It's like, all right, this is no longer manageable. Rather than hire 2 people to manage this program through, you know, Google spreadsheets or just, you know, arduous direct messages. let's actually use a platform to manage it and be a little bit smarter with our resources.
And Tom, is there kind of a minimum or average monthly budget that you look for when you're kind of talking to a prospect, and if they'd be a good fit for Choley?
Yeah, typically our clients are spending between $1,500 and about $4,000 a month with us.
Okay.
Just depends on the types of content that they're looking to generate. So for example, like our professional photographers are essentially executing on mini photo shoots that might yield, 30 to 50 photos. But you'd pay that person close to $500 plus.
Right.
So when you compare it to the alternative of, renting a house, hiring a bunch of models, getting lighting people, doing post-production, becomes quite affordable. And then, a huge part of that too is having diverse assets, right? A big problem with putting all your eggs in one basket and just doing a massive photo shoot is that it only yields like 10 or 20 usable photos, and they're all the same people, right? And just to touch on the diversity component, how important that's going to be for brands moving forward. You can't just have good looking white people anymore, and that's what consumers demand of these brands, and as they should. I mean, that's progress. A brand should be human. A brand should be real. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we had a great question, and a couple of people voted it as well. So I want to make sure we get to it. So any advice for startup companies who have a very low budget to start with? It sounds like this customer currently is only working with micro influencers by sending out some free products to test out. So any thoughts there for either of you?
Yeah, I mean,
the financing.
Yeah, go to Clearbanc. That would be the answer. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, but I think with a low marketing budget, there's a lot of things you can do to get scrappy. I think number one is these are just ideas, by the way. Take them with a grain of salt. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. But number one, starting a company podcast is a great way to talk to people, especially to talk to your customers or talk to influencers. 99% of people in the world love talking about themselves. I'm Exhibit A. And I think that if you're able to start an interview series where you write about people on LinkedIn or Medium or on a blog, or you have a podcast, it doesn't have to be a high quality podcast, where you interview people and get to know their story and tell it to your audience, it's a great way to meet people. And it's a great way, by the way, to meet influencers that you might want to work with and build a relationship with. So that's number one. I think number two, there are a lot of tools out there that you can use that are affordable. Hootsuite, Buffer, I think are great for scheduling content and being able to understand where your content is being directed towards, and is it actually hitting the right audience that you want to hit. On the audience analytics space, obviously, I do think we started our platform Trufan because we noticed that a lot of platforms like Sprinkler and Crimson Hexagon were way too expensive. But there are platforms like ours that start at $24 a month, where you can come on with one account and you can run your account, but also go and see over 10 million audience reports that have already been run on our system. So if you want to see the Rock's followers and then filter that based on Toronto and people that are interested in basketball that follow Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you can do that. So I think looking at a very raw and scrappy strategy is what I would recommend. But I love the fact that you're already reaching out to micro influencers and asking them, hey, I have free product, because that actually does work really well. That and giveaways on social media, that's golden, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
One thing there. I think that market research is one of the most underutilized components and potential value props of influencer marketing. So I'll give you a specific example. A few years ago, we were running this initiative with Chobani, where they came to us and said, like, basically, all right, we're crushing it with millennials. We cannot, for the life of us, figure out how to connect with Gen Z. Like, they haven't really thought about eating healthy yet. Their metabolism's still really good. How can you guys potentially help us with this? So what they did was, through us, found plenty of sort of Gen Z focused people who both fit that demographic and also had followings that also fit that demographic. And they just ran tests. They were just encouraging them to let loose, use their own creative interpretation, not giving them a ton of brand guidelines to follow. They just let them be creative. And again, they were looking at the relative engagement rate as compared to that to that influencer's standard engagement rate. And anytime they saw a major delta in the positive direction, they would take that as you know, a sign that they could potentially be onto something. So, you know, rather than just hire an expensive agency and pay them millions of dollars to go full Don Draper and come up with this, you know, epic go-to-market strategy on how they're finally going to reach Gen Z, you know, use influencers for market research and go in prepared. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And switching gears for a second, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, starting from the beginning, the right way to essentially interview those partners, those creators, those influencers. What is the best way? We had a question around should you know, applicants interview, fill out an application, and then let's talk a little bit about how it works as far as you know, getting into contract negotiations and kind of when it makes sense to give out free product versus pay those creators or influencers.
Yeah. So, you know, in a perfect world, you'd probably do a 1 hour call with every single influencer and tell them the story about the brand, tell them exactly what you're looking for, and then have them execute on that. Obviously, that's not great for scale, right? And part of what we're talking about here is building a sustainable strategy that has major impact on the business and isn't just giving you that like ephemeral bump in awareness or satisfaction. So I would say that, you know, you want to give them plenty of detail around what you're looking for and be very specific, particularly if there's something that you don't want or you do want, right? You don't want to assume anything. That's something we see with new clients all the time, is that, you know, we tell them like, hey, if something's super important to you, like, say it now. And sometimes it can be something obvious, like, please make sure that the logo is displayed, or hey, don't put a blanket over the entire, you know, beanbag that we're selling. That was a recent example. So be specific about your do's and don'ts. Make sure that those things are communicated, but do it in a way that that scales. One thing we've occasionally done is that, you know, the marketer that's running point on a Choley campaign might, in addition to the brief, put together, you know, samples of past content that they've done, maybe even put together a little video explaining the why behind the campaign, where they're planning on using the content, and that type of context can be, you know, wildly helpful for the creators as they actually dive in and look to create something that the brand is going to be enthusiastic about having and using.
I think one thing I'd add there too is just doing your due diligence, right? Again, I like how Tom mentioned, you know, you're not able to go through and get on an hour call with someone, but you can definitely look at that influencer's page. You can see what are maybe some of the past brands that they've worked with. Maybe there's one that's local. Maybe there's one that you can DM and ask for, how is it working with this influencer? You can go into their post. You can see, all right, what are the comments like? Who's commenting? Is it just all upward, you know, high five emojis that are probably, you know, their family members just doing that because they asked for it? Or is it quality comments? You know, people that genuinely are taking time to think about what that post the influencer shared was and responding to it appropriately. So you can go through and do that. There's also, again, tools out there to go through and find the location of their followers, how many fake followers they might have. You should be able to arm yourself very affordably, I think, with the tools to do due diligence on an influencer before you go in and even chat with them.
Yeah, it took way too long to build that, to really emphasize that in the platform. But to Swish's point, as soon as we started, you know, adding reviews to creators and highlighting their past work, we saw that confidence from the brand end go up substantially. Right. And now they have a medal system that they're able to progress through on the creator side. And just like audience authenticity and getting a sense of how real their following is, you know, that can also just be huge. Right. It's the same way that you might think about purchasing a product. If you can't tell that it's real, it's a brand you've never heard of, there's no reviews, probably not going to have a whole lot of confidence.
No, those are some great tips for everyone. And there's kind of a specific kind of question here that I thought kind of lended well to talking about, you know, budgets for this channel and how much you should spend a month and that whole notion. So customer says, we work with 100 micro influencers by giving away products we can afford $2,000 to $3,000 US a month. Which looks better? Go on with the micro influencers or to add a few bigger influencers? It sounds like their products are dog related.
Lovely. Amazing choice, by the way. I would say the answer is both, you know, and again, it's hard obviously to give you a definitive answer before understanding what even the product is and what you've done so far, but I don't see why you can't do both. And what I mean by that is take 1 month where you work with exclusively micro influencers, take another month where you take that 2 to 3K budget and you try to find 2 or 3 bigger influencers and see what the payoff is there. And then have another month where you mix it, where you split your budget up into 1.52K for 1 or 2 big influencers and the rest towards micro influencers, and figure out what is the best balance. I guarantee you though that the way that you're even thinking about the question is wrong. I don't think the question needs to be micro influencers versus big time influencers. I think it really is on the type of people you're working with. You'll realize that there's actually some incredible influencers that you can work with that have a very loyal following, that are really easy to work with, that want to share your product because they already might use it, for example. And that might be a lot better than finding a micro influencer that is a pain in the ass to work with, doesn't really share the content properly that you want, and isn't giving you the right tracking that you even want. So I think looking at it in this like micro influencer versus influencer paradigm is probably wrong. What I think you should do is just try both and then see what type of people you like working with in terms of the pages that you're promoting.
Yeah, I think that theme of experimentation is and open-mindedness is spot on. But also, you know, just to add one point there, you know, think about what the actual your actual desired outcomes are. Like, are you just doing 100 micro influencers a month because like that's what you deem to be a good program, or are we actually driving towards some specific, you know, goals and indicators that that are actually going to move the business forward? So I would really be cognizant of what the end objective is, and then sort of reverse engineering it from there.
Yeah, great call. And talking about objectives, we had some questions around KPIs and metrics. And so first off, for early stage brands who are just gaining some momentum here, what are those metrics they should be looking at? Obviously, everyone wants to know the ROI and the performance, how it relates to conversions and sales, but are those the right ones to be thinking about for brands who are just starting out, or are there some other ones?
Go ahead, Swish.
I think it does depend on the influencer campaign in particular. Like if you're getting someone to promote a piece of content, then maybe impressions is a perfectly valid metric to look at, right? Because I know that even for Trufan, there've been some videos where we don't care if people convert. We just want like as many eyeballs as possible to watch this video and at least understand what Trufan is, or even know about Trufan. So the next time that we give them an ad, or the next time we speak at a conference they're at, they can remember, I've actually heard of Trufan before. So it really depends on I think the campaign you're running. If you're running a campaign though very much around product and you're trying to go through and get influencers to promote your product, I wouldn't resort to just looking at impressions as, yay, we did it. We got 10,000 views on our product. Because if you are genuinely looking for impression, and again, this comes down to having a very honest conversation with yourself and not bullshitting yourself early on, you want to make sure that you're starting to move quickly in terms of going through influencers like a slice of bread, honestly, right? Like if it's not working, move on to the next person, work with the next person, reallocate your budget somewhere else, because you have the luxury in today's world to do that very quickly.
Yeah, and that's why you wouldn't want to again, fall in love with just doing a few things with a few influencers. You want more at bats, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, it of course helps with the content generation side because you have a lot more people that are submitting assets that you, the brand, then have the ability to repurpose. But you know, in terms of the actual ROI side, generally, I wouldn't say that in a traditional performance sense that influencer marketing is necessarily ROI positive. I think what happens oftentimes with young brands is that they'll work with a handful of influencers, and 1 or 2 of them just happen to drive a ton of trackable revenue. Maybe it's a point of sale code, or maybe it's a link in bio, and then they'll the natural conclusion that they'll make in their mind is that if we just work with millions of influencers, we're gonna make a ton of money. it's the reason a lot of influencer platforms, including ours, come up with, metrics around the earned media value and things like that are kind of intangible and fairly arbitrary, to be perfectly honest. That's applying more of like a traditional CPM model. Again, I would think a little bit beyond the desire for immediate, provable, positive dollars in, dollars out when it comes to influencer.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we have some great questions, and I know it's probably hard to get to all of them. And also, I know there's tons of different founders here who are working in the cannabis sector, the food sector. So just if we want to, I'll just touch on a couple of them because I know we're running out of time here, but this one is sort of interesting. So this is somebody who's in the legal cannabis space. So their marketing abilities are pretty limited. We aren't allowed to do any sort of giveaways, cannot use paid social, can't show consumption in our content. That being said, with those limitations, what would be the most important thing that they need to be doing or thinking about?
Yeah, I can take this. I actually, we work with a few cannabis companies, and I think the biggest thing you can do is experiential events. And so Supreme Cannabis, I think, is a great example of this. I think before COVID happened, they premiered a movie called Beach Bums, which has Zac Efron in it. So it was clearly an amazing movie. And they played it at Yonge and Dundas, and they gave away free merchandise, and they gave away, just samples of their product out in the movie theater, which was great. But the way that they went about finding the people to invite to that event was through data. So they went about trying to find all the people that might follow the Toronto Raptors and be at Ryerson University or the University of Toronto, because the likelihood of those people indulging in cannabis might be more than finding someone at whatever, right? So I think the way that you go about finding people can be very targeted. But again, I think in a world like you said, where you're not able to do giveaways, you're not able to do paid ads, it can be very tough to get your message out if you don't do anything experiential. And I understand that that must have been really tough during COVID. But now that things are opening up, I do think it gives you an incredible opportunity to get back out there and host events in person where you can invite a larger community that enjoys your product or enjoys cannabis as a whole to come out and chat.
Yeah, that's great. So we have a few minutes left here. So just want to ask you both kind of a final question. So we covered so many great topics today, and thank you so much for kind of all your tips and tricks. And so where do you kind of see the influencer marketing space heading from here on out? Obviously there's things, I mean, we're in this kind of post-apocalyptic COVID world, and then plus we have lots of busy holiday seasons, coming up. It's around the corner as far as Black Friday or some sort of back to school, whatever that looks like. So how are you what do you kind of see, and what are you advising your customers with all that said?
Yeah, I can lead it off. So influencer, again, is going to become more and more pay to play. Facebook is obviously interested in monetization. And they're going to continue to suppress the natural reach, organic reach of both brands' posts and of influencer posts. So what that necessitates is a lot of open-mindedness and being nimble with your strategy, right? So as things continue to shift, think about a strategy that again benefits more, more of the entire organization, the entire marketing org. Rather than just the social function. So I mean, the beauty of this entire ecosystem of influencers, which has grown like crazy, is that these people are just really, really talented. Like I've seen examples where, brands have had great relationships, ongoing relationships with influencers, and they've ended up doing things with them that have included like a custom bag line that they've actually weighed in on. They've consulted with new products. So, these people beyond just the content creation piece, which obviously I'm always going to go back to because that's the entire, thesis of Choley. But think about how these people can add value to your organization beyond just reaching their immediate audiences, but also when it does come to reaching audiences, be prepared to put budget behind either boosting those posts or doing whitelisted campaigns to look like audiences.
And can you kind of explain what whitelisting campaign would be, Tom?
Yeah, dark posting, whitelisting, they're interchangeable, but it's essentially where you're serving an ad to a community on Instagram, for example, that doesn't follow that actual influencer, but fits certain criteria around the sort of ad targeting group. But it looks like it's an influencer post, but it's actually an ad appearing in your feed.
Gotcha. Cool. And Swish, would love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I piggyback very much off what Tom said. I do think influencer marketing is only going to get more and more popular. I actually do want to quickly explain why, though. And I think it's important just to understand that going forward. It's a contrarian perspective. I'd love to hear, by the way, your guys' feedback after. If you totally disagree with me, that's fine. But I do think that the new .com bubble is online advertising. I do think that Google, Facebook, Instagram ads are losing their effectiveness that they previously had. And it's for 4 key reasons. One, I think ad fraud is a big issue. About $50 billion to $150 billion will be lost in the next 3 to 5 years due to domain laundering and click farms, where people think they're buying ads, but they're actually buying fake traffic. The second are ad blockers are on a rise. I have ad blockers on. I know my co-founder, Anik, has ad blockers on. About 40% of North American YouTube users have ad blockers on. So you're not even able to get those ads fully to the consumer that you might want. The third is that brands have no control where ads are even placed in the first place. There's a great article that was posted, I think, 2 weeks ago. Verizon and JP Morgan last year had their ads put on top of racist YouTube content. And obviously they had no control over that. So can you imagine being the PR manager at one of these firms, waking up in the morning and being like, couldn't have seen this one coming because I had no control of where my ad was being placed. And finally, and I think most importantly, the attribution effect of ads is just really messy. Like if you ask a marketeer, tell me why your ads are effective, and if they point to sales data, that's wrong. Because there are cases where people already have buying intent, but they're getting ads, right? Think about the last time that you mentioned something to your phone and you got an ad for it, right? Like I was looking for a mattress and I was telling my mom about, I need to buy a mattress. I don't know if it's Casper or Endy. In the progressive week after, I was hit up with ads from both Casper and Endy, right? And you think, oh my God, Siri, like my phone's listening to me. But that's the way that these algorithms work, is that a lot of these ads are being put in front of people that already had buying intent. So you can't quantify whether or not the ad is working or it's just people that want to buy your product in the first place. So I think with all of that in mind, I do think influencer marketing is only going to get popular. I do think that the traditional model of doing influencer marketing was flawed, of paying people with millions of followers. But I also think that consumers are getting tired of seeing sponsored posts all the time. So I think the biggest challenge is going to be on what Tom talked about at the very beginning. How do you go through and beat that challenge of inauthenticity? And how do you go about creating a seamless influencer collaboration that works because of the values that both the brand and influencer have being aligned? That's going to be the big challenge going forward.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, guys. This is awesome. I think we got a few great comments and feedback too, so I'm so happy to see that. So yeah, just a little bit about our speakers: Tom Logan, CEO and co-founder of Choley. So you can find him at COHLEY.com, and we'll send an email with a recording and links to all their platforms and sites so you can find everyone. And Swish, excuse me, CEO and co-founder of Trufan, Trufan.com. Again, we'll send all this out. If you are a Clearbanc customer and using your capital with one of these 2 great platforms, there is a great discount on your Clearbanc fee. And so that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build this kind of partner ecosystem where Clearbanc will always be kind of your cheapest cost of capital and an easy way to access capital. So if you have any questions, again, please come email me, Margot at Clearbanc.com, or yeah, we'll send an email with all this good stuff. So thank you so much for everyone tuning in. We hope this is helpful, and definitely let us know any feedback. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Margot. Thanks,
everyone. Thanks. Appreciate it, Margot. Thanks, Tom.
Bye, guys.